So, what's the real story behind the hijab? It's a symbol we see all the time, right? But it's so often viewed through this filter of headlines and assumptions. In this explainer, we're going to peel back all those layers to get to the deep spiritual meaning that's so often missed.
Seriously, just take a second and think about it. What's the very first thing that pops into your head? For a lot of us, that image is instantly loaded with meaning. We kind of project our own ideas and biases onto it. But what if that first impression isn't the whole story? Not even close.
And right there, that's the heart of the misunderstanding. On one hand, the external world often sees it as a political statement or, even as a symbol of oppression. But on the other hand, the internal experience, the one we're exploring today, sees it as something else entirely. A really personal act of worship, a profound connection to one's faith.
And that is the story we're diving into. The sources show that to really, truly get the hijab, we have to shift our focus away from the external world of politics and society and turn it inward, to the world of spiritual connection.
Okay, so to understand this internal perspective, we have to start with a core concept called haya. Now, it's often translated as just modesty, but that one little word, it doesn't even come close to the real meaning. Haya is a whole state of being. It's like an inner compass of humility and dignity that guides a person's every single move to make sure they don't do anything that would displease God.
And look, this isn't some minor detail or a footnote. The Prophet Muhammad himself put haya right at the very heart of belief. It's not just related to faith, it's a fundamental branch of faith. So that really establishes it as a pillar, a totally non-negotiable part of the spiritual framework.
And what's really fascinating is just how all-encompassing haya is. This isn't just about what you wear. Not at all. It's a holistic principle that's meant to shape everything. The words you say, your thoughts, your actions, your entire conduct. It's basically a code for living with dignity. So when you start to see it through this lens of haya, the purpose of modest clothing completely changes. It stops being about hiding or concealing something. Instead, it becomes a form of protection, a safeguard for yourself and for society from acts that are considered forbidden. This brings us to a really critical question. If it's not for society, and it's not a political statement for other people to analyze, then who is this deeply personal act really for?
Well, the answer lies in what's called the vertical relationship, or ibadat. This is the idea of a direct, one-to-one connection between a person and God. It's a relationship that influences every single choice they make, totally independent of what other people think. The audience isn't horizontal, it's vertical.
So within that vertical relationship, wearing the hijab is seen as this profound act of worship. Yeah, it starts with submission to a divine command, but it's not passive. It becomes a conscious, very personal choice, an active expression of love and reverence for God.
And here's where all the misunderstanding comes from. You have this act that's motivated by an internal, vertical relationship, but it's being judged by an external, horizontal world. And when those two perspectives collide, the real meaning just gets completely lost in translation.
Think about it like this. In a lot of Western thought, we tend to separate our private, spiritual life from our public identity. But in Islamic philosophy, that line, well, it often doesn't even exist. Faith is meant to be fully integrated into every part of life. So your public self, including how you dress, becomes a direct expression of your whole identity.
This fundamental difference in worldview creates a really powerful cultural bias. And you can see this bias play out so clearly when you look at how we react to very similar symbols, just from different cultures. This is where it gets incredibly stark. A Christian nun's veil is widely seen and understood as a sign of sincere religious devotion, right? But a Muslim woman's hijab, which is a similar act of covering for religious reasons, is so often viewed through this lens of oppression. It just goes to show how much our perception can change depending on the cultural context. And of course, that perception of oppression leads directly to the single most common question asked in the West. Is wearing the hijab a sign of a lack of freedom?
But what the source material does is challenge us to flip that question completely on its head. What if it's not about a lack of freedom at all, but about embracing a different kind of freedom?
A freedom from things. Freedom from the absolute relentless pressure to conform to societal beauty standards that are always changing and often totally unattainable. And freedom from the objectifying gaze of others, which allows a woman to be seen and valued for her mind and her character, not just her appearance.
Okay, And there's another common misconception we should probably clear up too. The head covering is absolutely not a sign of celibacy or some kind of denial of a woman's sexuality.
Instead, it does something really quite different. It actually allows for the combination of sexuality and respectability. It creates a boundary, separating her personal life and sexuality from the public sphere, keeping it private and dignified, not erasing it. So when we put all these pieces together, a totally different picture emerges. It becomes a choice that, from this spiritual perspective, is all about dignity and privacy. It's a testament to a conscious decision to follow a path that is deeply, deeply personal and spiritual.
So that kind of brings us to our final thought. After peeling back the layers on just this one symbol, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What else do we think we understand just by looking? What other stories are we completely missing just because we're only seeing them from the outside?